Hi, this is Graphically Alex coming at you with all things fat related. If that's something that interests you, please subscribe. I'd love to have you. Today, what we're going to do is we're going to react to a fat babe rant. So, what I saw from the beginning, I haven't seen the whole thing, is basically she's talking about how thin is in is coming back. And so I want to just go ahead and respond to this. It's actually kind of long. It's like 8 minutes. So we're just going to be reacting to her. So let's get started here. Okay. I'm going into it trying to be reasonable. So we're going to see how it goes. Let's see. Let's go.
So I don't know if y'all have been paying attention to the signs, but like we are re-entering a thin is in era, and it's fucking with me real.
Okay, so first and foremost, I have to just say it's not necessarily that thin is in is an era. It's more so that the fat acceptance was an era. That was an era. That was a moment in time. It was a few years, maybe like 5 years of time, probably from around 2015 to 2020. Right after that, it already started going down real fast. It's kind of brought down by everything that happened in 2020 because of the obvious connection between you know what and obesity. And in 2021, I started seeing a huge amount of like anti-FA channels coming in and growing, and people really going against the rhetoric. So it's been dying for a few years. We're now in 2024. It's been dying. This has not been a fast thing. I think you guys were just kind of isolated, and so you didn't realize that the world was moving on without you. I saw the writing on the wall last year, or even in 2022. I could see the trends. I could see the trends of how things were changing, and I knew that fat acceptance was going to die in 2023, and it's just going to continue to die. So if you're very concerned, if you're one of those types of people that's like, I want to be on the right side of history, fat acceptance is not the right side of history. I'll tell you point blank. That's the facts. Okay.
Real bad. I feel like around like maybe 2017, 2018, I started to like finally develop this critical lens.
Okay, let's see what she wrote here. I say finally because my impact moment into my critical lens on anti-fatness happened in my mid-20s when I finally developed my adult body and realized that it was fat. I grew up thin and was really resistant to understanding how harmful fat phobia was until it directly impacted me. Okay.
Of like anti-fatness as it operates within our society. And at that time, I entered into what felt like this very niche group of the population that was like, you know what? We're fat and we're going to be fat. We are going to like acknowledge all of the evidence, not even just empirical evidence that diets don't work, but also like.
So I would say it wasn't necessarily niche. I think it was actually more so the peak. The peak of fat acceptance was probably 2019, and it was really growing a lot in 2018 and 2017. It was growing a lot those years. So I wouldn't necessarily agree. I would say it was more niche prior to 2015. And maybe I'm splitting hairs here, but I noticed a huge shift with like Tess Holliday's campaign that like launched in 2015 and all that went on. And again, maybe it's because I was always fat. So I always was aware of certain things in regard to the issue of fatness. I always had a watchful eye. So I saw it shifting really even around 2013. The rhetoric was changing because they said that obesity is a disease, and that changed how people viewed it. And in a lot of ways for the worse, I'm going to be honest. It kind of made it worse and more confusing than it already was, in my opinion. But that was definitely a misstep. And so it was actually going on for a minute. But I remember when it was declared, and again, I was very, very focused on my weight, like as an issue for quite a while. So yeah, I looked at that type of stuff. But I'd say prior to that, it was more niche. I think, again, was it ever not niche? Like, I don't know that it was ever mainstream, really. But they at least were able to gaslight everybody into thinking it was mainstream from 2015 to 2020. Really, those years. But anyways.
Anecdotal evidence. Like, you can just kind of look around and kind of see that, like, there's something off with this dieting thing. Like, there's something that's not right. If all it takes...
Yeah, well, I think people can also look around and see that there's something off with the standard American diet. People can look around and see there's something off with eating tons of calories. There's something off with being sedentary. I don't think that's a natural state of humanity to be completely sedentary. There's a lot of things that are, not necessarily natural or intuitive or whatever that we have in society. So I can't say that dieting is any different than the numerous other examples, like being up at night. Some would say even like nuclear families. Like, there's a lot of arguments against that kind of thing being unnatural. Like having just your immediate family living with you. That's not necessarily how it always was. There's a lot of stuff that people talk about in regard to what is not working or what is off. There's a lot of things that are off. Some people are upset about I don't know. There's just a lot of things. So to me, I just don't see how dieting would be even a hair of anything compared to what everybody's doing, especially in regard to health issues. Like, I tried to touch on like some other issues, but when we look at like health issues and health stuff, being sedentary is completely unnatural. And I really think that needs to be looked at. It needs to be questioned. I don't think that's working. But anyways, okay.
Is calories in and out, or if all it takes is getting the right, macros, or going to the gym, or
calories in and out, it does work to a certain extent. What it doesn't factor in is your satiety and your hunger. If you're too hungry, then you're not going to be able to sustain a caloric deficit. I talk a lot about that on this channel. A lot of people talk about it. You'll have some people talk about like getting enough protein. I don't disagree with that, but I also will talk about like seed oil consumption, estrogen, hypothyroidism in general. It's something that does affect super morbidly obese people, especially a lot. Even if you're producing the hormone, the fat on your body creates so much estrogen that it undermines your thyroid hormone. So it's really important to consider, because that could be why you're hungry. But there's also other psychological factors like having an ED, which is also really important to consider. If you have psychological issues, it doesn't matter how hungry you are, you're still going to eat. So I think it's really important to look at that as well. So yes, calories in, calories out. It is king when it comes to weight loss. It is. But ultimately, there's more to the picture. And that, I think, should be acknowledged by what she's saying. That is something we in anti-FA need to speak more about, because a lot of people have virtually zero education in regard to even considering hunger. A lot of the mindset behind weight loss is that you just have to deal with being hungry. I don't agree with that. So, yeah, it's a fair complaint. As far as the gym is important in terms of satiety. Again, it helps you. It helps carb metabolism, especially weightlifting. It's major. If you have insulin resistance, or if your carb metabolism is totally messed up, it's going to be very hard for you to stay in a deficit because you're going to be really hungry. I would say that going to the gym, lifting weights has been, even if I do it on and off, it has been one of the most important decisions in regard to long-term sustained weight loss that is not reliant upon drugs or other interventions. It's because I use my own body. I burn the glucose in my muscles. So my glucose that I eat has somewhere to go. People don't think about how important that is. It's always downplayed, but when you're super morbidly obese, it can be the difference between you actually losing the weight and you never actually losing the weight. What people don't understand is when you're really big, you have to consider everything. You have to consider the psychological aspects. You have to consider the physical aspects, the hunger, the insulin resistance. If you have any other hormone issues or disorders, you have to look at lifestyle factors. Are you in an abusive relationship, for example? Like, all these things contribute to super morbid obesity. It's a major, major issue. If we're looking at it from a less intensive place, like someone who's just obese, for example, maybe a lot of those things don't apply. But at the end of the day, calories in, calories out, advice for somebody who's just obese, that's going to be the ultimate answer. So I think we have to look at all these different factors and think about them and really individuate it and think about it as an individual, which is why I always, 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 always downplay and don't like systemic issues at the forefront of the conversation about obesity or weight, because this is what you get. You get someone like her saying that exercise and counting calories and all this stuff doesn't matter because it doesn't work for everybody all the time in every single circumstance. That's what happens when you make it a systemic issue. That's why I don't on this channel. And I will say, to criticism, like, I do get criticism for that. But there's a reason. There's a method to my madness. It's because this is not, you can never divorce accountability from obesity. It will never happen. The more that we have tried as a society to cut that off, the worse it has gotten. So I will not support that on this channel. Okay, let's continue.
Or, eating the right way. If that's all it takes, then why is it so difficult for everybody to...
For many people, that is all it takes. And for many people, it is a straight line. You're thinking about exceptions. You're thinking about a super morbidly obese person, which I outlined and talked about those points earlier in the video. I don't need to repeat it.
Not only lose weight, but to also keep it off in a sustainable way. Like, why is it that every single time someone loses a significant amount of weight and life happens?
Every single time. Every single time. Keep that in mind.
To them. And I mean, like, life shit. Like, somebody, but to also keep it off in a sustainable way. Like, why is it that every single time someone loses a significant amount of weight and life happens to them? And I mean, like, life shit. Like, somebody goes through a divorce, somebody has a baby, someone gets an injury. Why is it that every time some life shit happens, they gain the weight right back? Like, I became a part of this group that said...
Okay, I can answer that question. So if you lose weight using your stress system, if you lose weight using adrenaline, which you can, people don't like it when I say this, but we're going to answer the question, okay? For some people, they can lose weight with adrenaline and they're fine. But for other people, if your system is fried, it's not going to work. Doing diets like keto, veganism, counting way too many calories, really, really, really lowering your caloric intake. These are adrenal activities. Overtraining at the gym, not sleeping, getting in constant fights, living in a toxic environment. All these different things are very, very adrenal focused. And if you're losing weight in a Biggest Loser shouting match type of way, or if you're losing weight to get a revenge body, if you're losing weight for these types of reasons or in this way, if something bad happens in your life, your stress system is already fried and you're going to gain weight. Now, that might still be worth it to you. Like I said, a lot of people like different diets. I'm not here to judge. I don't really care personally what somebody chooses to do. I'm just answering her question. There are other ways to do it. You can do it with a moderate caloric deficit. You can do it focusing primarily on exercise as a major part of a deficit. That is not adrenal to do. As long as you're not overdoing it, you can think about it in terms of like getting enough saturated fat, getting enough carbs, getting enough protein, like getting enough of these things to where you're not stressing the body. you can still lose weight if you count calories. I don't think people realize what an important tool calorie counting is, especially for a super morbidly obese person. It is very, 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 very helpful. Like, it is one of the most helpful things to somebody in that state because your system is off. And so you don't even know what an appropriate amount of food is a lot of the time. So counting can keep you accountable to what you're doing, and you can still have a very balanced diet and lose weight slowly and without stress, so that if something bad happens, you will not gain. I will say it again. Last year, I had gotten in a car accident. I got dumped. I didn't use my stress system to lose weight. So what happened? I continued losing. So not every single time. I proved that wrong. No. Don't fry your stress system. Be aware that if you're living on adrenaline, you have to understand that that is like taking out money out of a bank account. If you overdraft it, you're going to have to pay it back. You're going to gain weight. So that will happen if you use your stress system, but it's not necessary to use it. And that's what I'm here to say. I'm not here to judge if you do a diet like keto or you do veganism or you do these things. I don't personally care. Like I said, I don't. I'm just saying that never would have worked for me as a super morbidly obese person, especially with BED past and with massive hypothyroidism. Those diets are very, very harsh in that circumstance. That doesn't mean that it's harsh for everybody. I hate that I have to do so many disclaimers, but it does touch on what she's talking about. And I will say that until the cows come home, because it needs to be stated. There are other ways to do it. So no, not every single way fails every single person. And again, a lot of people lose weight being vegan. A lot of people lose weight being keto. A lot of people, especially if you're obese, you probably could. If you're not that big, it's not going to be as hard. So I don't think that she's doing too much of a blanket statement on everybody or all the time or everyone gains weight. No, not everybody gains weight. That's not true.
You know what? I think it's not us. I think that it's not that we're broken. I think that we are being sold diet culture, and making people hate their bodies is super, super profitable.
I don't know if I would ever describe myself as broken. I feel like in the context of obesity, that is a very, very, very overly emotional statement to make about obesity. I don't talk about obesity in that way because it's not helpful whatsoever. I feel like on this channel, I'm constantly trying to get us back to reality and back to like logic and physicality in regard to the issue. So I would say it's not that you're broken. It can be that your metabolism is broken. It can be that maybe your relationship with food is broken. It can be something like that. But you as a person being broken, I think that's way too emotional and almost spiritual and religious. And I just don't think that it should apply in a physical conversation about obesity. It's just not the right way to talk about it. I'm sorry, it just isn't.
Like, you can make so much money off of telling people, if you buy this fitness plan, if you start eating,
you can make a lot of money selling people absolute crap food too. So she says here, not to mention how anti-fatness operates as a way to control members of our society and punish Black people. Word to Sabrina Strings and Deshaun Harrison. There are Black people who are not fat. I'm just going to leave that there. So, okay.
This certain way, if you buy these pills, you're going to be able to look thin like your favorite celebrities, and then you'll be able to have access to love and power and success and care. I became one of those girlies back in maybe like 2017, 2018. Now, very recently, within my critical lens around anti-fatness, and when I say recently, honestly, probably within the last year or so, I've had to accept that specifically fat people, all people in general, but specifically fat people, are still going to pursue intentional weight loss. And at one point
Poor baby.
in my life, I admittedly was pretty judgmental around this. And some of that I think came from my privilege as someone that's in like a medium, smaller fat body. But then also some of my like own shit around my history with disordered eating. And how I know that like was impacted by.
Okay, well, it might not be resolved. If you're comparing that much to the point where you're judging somebody, especially somebody who's super morbidly obese, who's trying to lose weight, if that was ever even a thought on your mind, you need to question if your ED is gone. Like, I'm saying that just honestly, you need to question it because that is crazy. That is mental illness. I am very tired of the complete normalization of mental illness and fat acceptance. Having an ED is a mental illness. You need to do something about it. You have to fight it. It's similar to a compulsion. It's similar to OCD. You have to deal with the anxiety around your body. You can't constantly just live like that and then project it onto everybody. It's not healthy. That should never be normalized. You should not be comparing your body that much. Oh my gosh, wow. I would question if it's gone. I don't think it is.
All of the messaging that I've received about dieting all my life. So I've had to accept that people are going to try to lose weight, period. Because the world isn't really changing to accommodate fat people. So of course fat people are going.
There's not much else that can be done, especially in the United States. We are probably the most accommodating to obesity that you could possibly be. And so if this is not good enough for you, then honestly, maybe there's just an issue with being obese. That's the conclusion that I came to for a lot of different reasons. Again, I had a lot of health issues in regard to being super morbidly obese. I still struggle just being morbidly obese. I still have health issues. They're just half as bad. So I don't talk about it as much because for me, it's so much easier than it was last year that it's like hard for me to still complain. But I am struggling currently. I am. It's the summer solstice. I have a lot of burn off. I'm having a lot of weight loss symptoms. I'm feeling very, very hypo this June. But is it as bad as last year? No, it isn't. So I don't tend to talk about it as much, but I still have health issues and hypothyroidism tied to my morbid obesity. There's no way I want to continue to live like that. No way. And to feel such a relief to have it be half as bad, of course I want to lose the weight. Of course I do. And I thank God that I was able to get out of the BEG mindset that I had when I did. I really do. Because now I can just lose it. And I don't have that psychological barrier. And that's huge. So I'm just saying that's why people are losing weight.
Going to try to lose weight. And I feel like I've had to put down my judgments around that, to be completely transparent, to make space, especially for fat people who are trying to navigate like a very fat phobic world. However, I don't know what it is. I've seen some thought leaders, like specifically like the disability justice thought leaders who have spoken about how it would just make sense that we would be re-entering.
Being fat is not a disability. I'm just going to say that. It's not. Okay.
Into like a thin as in era right after the pandemic. So you're seeing all these celebrities on Ozempic and speaking openly about Ozempic, losing drastic amount of weight. Really,
being fat is a consequence of negative eating behaviors and thought patterns. So it could be an ED, which means that you're not eating properly. Obviously, it's implied in the name. Or it could be that you are abusing food in some way for some other reason, or that you have other hormonal issues. But to call being fat a disability, I wouldn't say that. I would say that it's a consequence of not taking other steps or not dealing with issues, which I don't know that other people who are disabled really have that same thing. I just don't. So I don't think it's a good line of reasoning. I just don't. That's all I'm going to say.
Really quickly, rapidly. And of course, now that's having a trickle down effect to the general population.
So she's talking about Ozempic. Let me go back a little bit.
Losing drastic amount of weight really quick, like specifically like the disability justice thought leaders who have spoken about how it would just make sense that we would be entering into like a thin is in era right after the pandemic. So you're seeing all these celebrities
It's true.
on Ozempic and speaking openly about Ozempic, losing drastic amount of weight really quickly, rapidly. And of course, now that's having a trickle down effect to the general population. And maybe what I'm noticing is just like a more open attitude around even talking about pursuing intentional weight loss. Whereas at one point, there was like a lot of shame around.
No, that's only in certain circles. I've said this a lot. I don't know if you guys gaslit yourselves into thinking that people were ashamed of losing weight, but no. There wasn't any shame in most people, which I think that's where I kind of start to giggle a bit, because that never was true. I think you just believed it was, and that's maybe something you had to believe to feel better back then, but no, it was never true.
Like a more open attitude around even talking about pursuing intentional weight loss. Whereas at one point, there was like a lot of shame around even wanting to talk about losing weight. Because with body positivity, the body positivity movement came in and there was like all this pressure to just love your body. You should love your body. It's feminist, right? So then people started to feel ashamed of
Maybe within feminism, but I don't even know about that. But I don't know. You guys can let me know if you felt ashamed of talking about losing weight. I never did. I never, ever felt shame about being on a diet. Ever. So I don't understand that at all. That was not my experience whatsoever. So you guys can let me know if you guys had that experience. But I have a hard time even seeing any real like political circles feeling that way on a mainstream level. Like, to me, it's always been kind of fringe. You know, I saw it in a corporate push. Like, there was certainly a corporate push for fat acceptance, but not everybody listens to TV shows and commercials for what they find shameful, you know? So I don't know. Maybe that's what she's talking about.
themselves if they couldn't love themselves out of the desire to want to make their body smaller. But now people are talking about it a lot more openly. And
I think people are just being more honest. I don't think that their views ever changed. I think that's the honest truth. It never changed. I think people probably just heard you say certain things and they just stayed quiet around you. That's probably all it was. Because people don't realize that some people walk on eggshells around other people. And I think the fat issue that I remember in 2018, in like around that time, is people would walk on eggshells around the issue. But it didn't mean that they had a different view. Now they're not willing to walk on eggshells anymore. And I think they just got tired of it, basically. That's all. Because fat acceptance, it kept getting more and more ridiculous and expecting and demanding more and more. And when you do that, sometimes it can be, you reach a critical point where it's kind of like there's no pleasing fat acceptance. So people just give up entirely on even pretending to try, which I know that's harsh, but I'm just really breaking down what I think happened. I think people pretended to care about the issue of fat acceptance, and that is wrong. And I do think that anybody watching this video, you should not pretend that you support it if you don't. I don't think that's good, because she's very, someone like her is very confused about this now. So I don't think that's nice to do to somebody.
I'm noticing in myself, I don't know if this is happening for other people, but for me, what I took solace in was being a part of that fringe, that positive fat acceptance.
Okay. Well, you're still there. It's still a fringe. It always was. It was just a corporate push and a fringe. That's all it was. Which, again, not everybody listens to corporate messaging. I don't. I certainly don't. So I don't know what to tell you.
Community that said, I'm just going to accept that I'm fat and I'm just going to live my life with that. And I don't know, I feel like it's getting a little bit smaller, and
people are having health issues. People are dying. That's why.
It's like maybe the dominant narrative voices that are like super like pro be a skinny bitch, it's getting harder and harder to drown that out. So whereas for me, in my own personal journey, I don't think that I ever necessarily got to a point where I felt completely like just happy being fat, if that makes sense. Like I could accept it. I could be like...
Oh, it makes a lot of sense because it's pretty miserable. So I think it makes perfect sense not being happy being fat. It's miserable. Especially the bigger you are. You might not have experienced that level, but as I said in my previous video, it is not it to be huge. It's still not it. Like where I'm at now, I'm like, like, I don't know. It kind of like, it's either like this very heavy, horrific, borderline like demonic level of experience, or it's cringy. That's pretty much the only levels you have with fatness. It's either going to be that horrific horror movie type of thing or cringe. It's never been cool. It's never been fun. It's never been this or that. Where I'm at now, it's just kind of cringe, but I'm still sick. It's still making me sick. So it's like, it's not just cringe. It's like in between. It's like I'm between demonic and cringe in terms of my obesity. I'm right in the middle where it's like I have half a demon and then half cringe. Like it's weird. But that's pretty much all it is. So I understand you're probably at a level of fatness where it's just cringy. And that isn't something that's going to make you happy. I get it.
Okay with it. I can just get dressed and be cute and, feel like it's fucking here. I could feel like moderately comfortable in my body enough so I can go out and have fun and date and all of that kind of stuff. But always in the back of my head, like there would be this thought of like, wow, I wonder how much differently I would feel if I was in a thinner body. But now I just feel like, I don't know, like it's harder to suppress the thoughts that say, oh, you just need to like eat less sugar, or you just need to like stop drinking so many sodas, or you need to like
just if you want to just count your calories. I mean, you're probably at that level of fatness where it's that simple. And I think it's sad that a lot of people have gaslit you into thinking it's really hard. But if you have an ED, then there's psychological issues there that need to be dealt with, which, like I said, I don't think they've been completely, or at least they haven't been resolved for very long. If you're comparing yourself to other people, it's not normal to do that with such a fervence. Like, it's okay to compare yourself occasionally, but when you have an ED, you're doing it so intensely all the time, and that's not good. Okay? So I don't know. I can't read your mind. I can't. But I would be like, ooh, is it better if you're doing that? I don't know.
restrict. Because at one point, like for me, the restriction thoughts were like pretty loud. And I don't know, I got to a point where like I could quiet them a little bit. Or I felt comforted by like, you know, principles of intuitive eating, like, you know, eat food for joy, you know, eat what your body wants. Trust yourself. Your body isn't going to want ice cream always. Just give it ice cream sometimes. It's going to want it sometimes. And
yeah, and you can do that in a moderate caloric deficit. You can still carry those principles over to a slight caloric deficit and you'll still lose weight. Especially if you don't have an ED and if you're not super morbidly obese, then it's really that easy. So in that sense, yes, I think comparing your struggles to a super morbidly obese person is not productive because it's not the same. So for you, it probably is that simple.
it's going to want other foods sometimes too. So I don't know, like it's just getting harder. And I feel like I know myself, and one of the big reasons why I had to put down my efforts for intentional weight loss is because it usually would become disordered. And even now, while my like,
Well, you have to think about, did you ever get out of it? You know, I think people don't think about it sometimes. Like, I don't want you guys to think you have an ED if you don't. Like, don't go down that path. If you don't have a toxic relationship with food tied to body image, then you don't have that, basically. So don't worry about it. But if you do, you have to like check in with yourself and just be like, is this ED logic or is this actual logic? Because they're two separate things. And you have to just make sure. So it's like, if the idea of being in a slight caloric deficit, still eating ice cream sometimes and still having your foods, but just keeping track and keeping that slow but steady weight loss, if that is like a very radical idea to you or something that is so far out of reach, you might have at least something going on. It's a huge warning sign, especially from a BED perspective. So it's a huge warning sign. If that is like alien planet to you, you may be in that ED logic. Okay? Because it really shouldn't be that serious. It should just be pretty basic and just honestly kind of a boring fact. And if that isn't what it is to you, then you may have some psychological issues. That's what I will say.
like disordered eating thoughts like are feeling pretty loud. Like I just refuse to engage with them.
I wish she would give examples.
Because like I know that it's not.
Or rather, I'm trying really hard to refuse to engage with them. Like I try to ignore them, but I worry about how stealthy they are. I wish you'd give an example.
It would not be healthy for me, for my mental health. Like it just would not go well. But I guess I feel a little bit scared. Like I just feel a little nervous for myself, but also just our population as well. I just felt like we were just getting closer and closer to.
No. We never were. It was never real. And I'm sorry that you have to like figure that out this way, but that's just a fact. It was never real.
Like really like fat politics being something that is like not something that's just fringe. Like it being something that kind of.
It always was. It was just pushed by corporations, which made you feel like it wasn't fringe, but it still was.
Reached the dominant narrative, and I don't know, man. I just see us backpedaling a bit.
I think that encouraging mass amounts of obesity is definitely not progress. So I'd say maybe we're actually getting back on track
as a society. So anyway, this is a long ass video, but if you made it to this 7-minute video, and maybe you're kind of struggling too, just know that you are not alone. We can't help but to be human through all of this shit. We are just little meat sacks.
I appreciate the like calmness of this video and just like saying things, I appreciate that a lot, because you don't always get that on fat acceptance. Sometimes it can be like so much, you know? So I appreciate that aspect of this. That was actually nice.
That's what I say all the time. We're just little sacks of flesh and bone. We can't help but to be impacted by the things that are going on around us. So, wishing y'all love and health, whatever that means, and sanity. God.
Right back at you. I agree.
Yeah, never mind. I don't know how we would be able to do that, but I love y'all and I'm here with y'all.
All right. So that was interesting. Let me know what you guys think. I'm going to go ahead and post it up. I still got to get to the gym. So right now I'm in my midnights era. But as I told you guys, I am struggling a bit right now. So I'm not going to like go all up on a tangent about it. But I just want you guys to be aware that I am still very hypolicious. But I will talk to you guys again tomorrow. I hope you have a good rest of your day, night, etc. And let me know your thoughts as always. Have a good rest of your day. Peace.